Aloha Exotica fans, welcome back to the Exotica Lounge, episode 2. This time we're going to be talking about what I call Proto-Exotica. I like to say Exotica as a style. You really can't call it Exotica before Martin Denny's Exotica album. So Les Baxter's works I would call pre-Exotica, but Baxter didn't come up with what he did just from nowhere. There was a lot of groundwork being laid in the early 1900s, and even before, that kind of led to what he did. So I want to look into that time period right now, and this is actually going to be a two-parter. Today we're going to do the Latin connection, and then from there we're going to go in a completely different direction that I think a lot of people don't really take into consideration when talking about Exotica. Little future forewarning there. Today I want to talk about four, I'm looking at my notes, 4 tunes, which if you listen to Exotica music, you're going to be familiar with these tunes. But I think these, in a large part, led to the development of Exotica. And to get into why these tunes are important, we kind of have to have a working definition of what Exotica is. And broadly, that's what this podcast is all about. What is Exotica? And I think it's one of those things that's different to everybody. It's one of those I know it when I hear it things, but everybody kind of has their own definition. Really, I mean, if you talk to 10 people, you're going to get 12 different answers because people are going to, myself especially, I'm going to contradict myself several times. But one of the key points of Exotica that I like to use as a way to sum it up is that it's music that is designed to transport the listener mentally, emotionally, figuratively to a different place, no matter where you are. So in large part, if the music references a certain location, whether it be through lyrics or just through the style of the music, I would say that's not really Exotica. Sometimes people ask me what's the difference between Exotica and just Latin dance music. Latin dance music is of a place. You know, this music is from Puerto Rico, from Cuba, from Brazil, and it's intrinsic to those places. One of the key points when Martin Denny developed his sound, he said, I want something that's going to feel exotic even when you're in Hawaii, right? So when people came to Hawaii and they heard these ukulele bands and the what we call hapa haole music now, to the vacationers coming to Hawaii, that sounded exotic. But if you lived in Hawaii, that was every day. So he wanted to develop something that would sound exotic no matter where you were. And in the next episode, we're going to bring that reference even more into focus. But that's what I'm looking at. So music that takes you to a place that doesn't exist, so that no matter where you are, you feel like the music is taking you somewhere else. One of the ways that happens is through a process that could sometimes be called cultural appropriation. I like to think of it as cultural appreciation. It's drawing facets of music from different cultures, blending them together. And sometimes really, the people doing it maybe don't fully understand the music of those cultures, but they hear something and something stands out to them and they say, I want to use this in my music. So yeah, sometimes that can get culturally dicey, but I think if it's done in a way that's respectful, serving to showcase a good light, rather than just being super derivative, or even, music sometimes can be used to make fun of other cultures. And I don't think that is ever what Exotica music is doing. I think they're trying to appreciate this music of other cultures. So let's get into it a little bit. The first song that I want to look at is called Taboo. Now again, if you listen to Exotica music at all, you have heard Taboo for sure. This was written by a Cuban band leader named Margarita Lucona in the early 1930s. She led a band called the Lucona Cuban Girls, an all-female Cuban dance band. Played a lot of music. She wrote a lot of music. They didn't record a lot of music. So I've not found an example of that group playing Taboo, but she definitely did write it. Now, you will see other references. I've seen some references that say Les Baxter wrote it. That's just obviously not true. It's much, much older. He did a great version of it. He didn't write it. A lot of places will credit Margarita's cousin, Ernesto Lucona. He led the Lucona Cuba Boys, an all-male Cuban dance band. He would use a lot of her songs in his performances and recordings, and because he tended to record more than she did, a lot of times he would be credited with her works. So yeah, she wrote this one, and a lot of times when I see Ernesto credited as an author, I tend to just assume he probably got that from Margarita. They were, I've seen them listed as cousins, and I've also seen him listed as her uncle, but they were family somehow. The first recording of Taboo was by a group called Quarteto Machine in 1934, and it's very interesting to me, looking at these tunes, how different they can be from one version to another. From the rhythms used, the instrumentation, that kind of thing. Good songs can be put into a lot of different contexts. But the original, or first recording at least, that I've been able to find is this one from Quarteto Machine. Here's a little clip of it. Very cool recording. I love this version of it. It took me a while to hunt it down, but I think it's one of my favorites. The thing about Taboo that leads it into this exotica kind of sphere is that this was a Cuban musician trying to invoke a feeling of Africa. So obviously there's a huge African influence in Cuba, but she was trying to give that feeling of, oh, this could be, a tune from, ancient times, a tribal kind of thing in Africa. The lyrics of Taboo are name-checking the gods or orishas of Yoruba, which they call it in Africa. In Cuba, it became Santeria. I don't know all the finer points of what makes one different from another, but it's a religious system that came from Africa to Cuba. And so yeah, a lot of the words that she's naming, if you put the lyrics into like Google Translate, a lot of them it just doesn't know what to do with, because it's actually the names of these orishas or gods. So that right away puts it into this African kind of context. One of the biggest things, I've been obsessed with this song for a while, and it came in because of the rhythm. Not the rhythm that's used in this version, but the rhythm that came to be used later. Again, great songs can be put into lots of different contexts. I've seen this one listed as a foxtrot, which is like a society kind of swing. I found it in an old Italian music magazine, which is very funny to me that it's listing, it doesn't have any music notation in it, it just lists the lyrics of all these songs. So if somebody's playing a song, you can sing along. So it was an Italian magazine that, yeah, they had it listed as a foxtrot, which I have heard recordings of Taboo as a foxtrot. Later, and I believe Baxter was the first to use this rhythm for this song, but this rhythm came to be a hallmark of exotica music. I'm going to play a clip of it right here. This rhythm, once Baxter had done it this way, it kind of became the hallmark that everybody used that rhythm for Taboo. there's still people who are recording taboo today. They tend to use this rhythm. This is going to come up again in another song that we're going to talk about later. But sometimes somebody makes a version that is just so impactful that people base their version off of that instead of the original. So Baxter used this rhythm. That's what drew me into it, was this rhythm, because as a percussionist, I've studied rhythm my whole life. And this rhythm, outside of the Exotica sphere, I had never heard before. It's similar to a lot of other things, but I had just never heard this played. I studied Latin music in school, never mentioned this rhythm. As far as I can tell, in the 50s, and probably before, this was referred to as Afro-Cubano, the Afro-Cuban rhythm. Today, if you say that as a name of a rhythm, especially to a drummer, they're going to play a completely different rhythm. So we don't call it that anymore. I call it the Exotica rhythm. When I'm calling a tune in my band, and I generally say, if you forget how this tune goes, play the Exotica rhythm and it's going to work. So we call it the Exotica rhythm. And it really, Denny used it a lot. Lyman used it everywhere. Baxter used it in a lot of different tunes. Everybody since then, this has been, if you want it to sound like Exotica, you use this rhythm. So that's what drew me into this deep dive into taboo, where it's become a lifelong obsession. My musician friends are sick of me telling them my latest finding on this rhythm. But that's where I'm at right now, is that it was called the Afro-Cuban rhythm. We don't call it that now, so I just call it the Exotica rhythm. Okay. Now, taboo, just as a song in various different forms and guises, has been recorded so many times. I've seen at least 140 versions listed. I didn't find those all myself. I'm actually pulling this up from a website. But yeah, at least 140 different recordings of taboo. Ones to check out, definitely, if you can get that original Quarteto Machine, it's amazing. Xavier Cugat actually did 2 versions of taboo, which is very cool to me, because the first one was from 1935. The second was 1964. So this, to me, shows the before and after of Les Baxter's version, and they're completely different from each other. So that's a good way to see, what even one band leader can do with a tune. I'm not going to list 140 versions, but there is a version of the Lacona Cuban Boys doing a version in 1935. Desi Arnaz did it. Augie Colon did it. There are ska versions. There are punk versions. There are jazz versions. Stan Kenton did it. Artie Shaw did it. Art Tatum did it. The big one to me, Les Baxter in 1956. This was, to me, I think, really, this put taboo on the map. And this is the one that us as Exotic fans, when we think of it, we listen, this is the one that we're thinking of. But again, everybody, obviously Denny and Lyman both did versions. Lawrence Welk did it. Ahmad Jamal did it. He's going to be coming up in a moment. We're going to be talking about Ahmad Jamal a little bit. But yeah, just everybody has done taboo. There's a really cool version that I like that's not on this list that I'm looking at, by Tak Shindo. Tak Shindo is a Japanese Exotica band leader, composer, arranger. He did a lot of great stuff. He's got an album called, I think it's pronounced Maganga, very Les Baxter-ish, almost more Baxter than Baxter. He goes just completely over the top with the choir singing oohs and ahs, huge orchestra, strings, all that kind of stuff. There was a lot of times when I was doing a residency at a tiki bar, they would have Tak Shindo in their playlist, so I'd be setting up for the night and I'd hear this song come on and I'm like, which album did Baxter do that on? And it wasn't Baxter. And that one of the ones that would always confuse me was the first song on the album. He calls it Mombasa Love Song. If you listen to it, it's taboo, just very arranged. I love this tune. It's so great. And I actually stole some stuff from him on my album. It opens up with, he does the bass line on Temple. which, I mean, that's Exotica right there. You put the bass line on timpani, and I stole it, just outright stole it, and put that on my album. So great tune, great version. But yeah, he doesn't call it Taboo, he calls it Mombasa Love Song. But if you listen to it, I mean, it's Taboo. So yeah, tons of versions out there. Again, you could this could be the Taboo podcast. I could do nothing but talk about versions of Taboo, but that would probably be boring. So let's move on. Next tune that I want to talk about is Simulo. And again, if you listen to Exotica music, you've heard Simulo in probably lots of different versions. But this is kind of going along these same lines. There is some controversy, if you will, about where this tune came from. It's listed as being written by Arden Clark and Harry Coleman in 1948. There are stories that this came from an ancient African chant.
Africa! Just me.
Sometimes an ancient Cuban chant is a very tribal kind of thing. Clark and Coleman, as far as I've ever been able to tell, none of them left the States, maybe never left New York. You know, these were just a couple of working songwriters, mostly in jazz music, in New York in the 30s and 40s. They say they came up with it, you know, out of whole cloth, but this story kind of built up around it that it came from these ancient tribal people, whether that be African, Cuban, somewhere else. I don't know which is true. Maybe they heard it somewhere in maybe some musicians came through New York and they heard it and stole it. Could be. I don't know, but it's listed as Clark and Coleman. First recording was actually done by Gene Krupa in his big band in 1949. Krupa, as a drummer, I know Krupa. If you don't know, Krupa was the guy that did Sing Sing Sing. That was his big thing. He was a celebrity back in the day. He was in movies all over the place. They would turn a drama or comedy into a musical so that they could put Krupa into it. There's all kinds of scenes of things where they just invented reasons for him to play drums. Some of the plots are just ridiculous, but it was just a vehicle to get Krupa in front of people because he brought people into the theaters. So Krupa was huge in the day. If you're as old as I am, you know him from the Chips Ahoy commercial. There's a Chips Ahoy commercial that had like animated cookies dancing to Sing Sing Sing. I actually played a gig one. This is a tangent. I get off on tangents. I was playing a gig one time with a big band at a frat party, which is a bad idea. But I was playing drum set, and there was this girl who was getting increasingly more drunk through the evening, and she would just come in front of the band and yell, "Chips Ahoy!" And it became a thing that whenever she said Chips Ahoy, I would just launch into Sing Sing Sing. It would have nothing to do with whatever song we were playing, but we played Chips Ahoy all night. So that's my Chips Ahoy story. Anyway, that's Gene Krupa. And again, if you listen to his version of it, it sounds incredibly different from what we know as Simulo. There's a weird little scat singing interlude that happens. They go into a swing rhythm for a large part of it, but he did the first recorded version. One of the most well-known was Peggy Lee sang it in 1949 with Dave Barber's Afro-Cubans. This was apparently used in a commercial for phone or something a few years ago. I don't watch TV, but apparently got popular for a while because of this commercial that used the Peggy Lee version. Denny did it in 57 on his first Exotica album. Lyman did it in 63 in a live recording, live at the Crescendo. I think it's technically called the Exotic Sounds of Arthur Lyman or something, but live version. They do some really cool things with it. There's a lot of things that Lyman does that you can't tell if they did it on purpose or if it was a mistake, but they made it work, and it's a really cool version, so I love Lyman for that. But again, Simulo, this was either guys from New York wanting it to sound like it was from either Africa or Cuba, South America, somewhere, or it was from those places and it got redone through the lens of these guys from New York. But again, it's people trying to bring into play this feeling of another place. And there's all kinds of discussion online about in the lyrics, what do they mean? There's a wonderful version where Desi Arnaz does it, and he likens it back to this old story from ancient Africa. So yeah, this whole mythology has been built up about what does Simulo mean. And so that just lends it to that exotica feeling that, yeah, again, no matter where you are, it feels like it's from somewhere far away and long ago. And that's a jazz tune, long ago and far away. But yeah, it's just got this feeling of otherness. As a musician, I love it because it's so wide open. There's a lot of just empty space. One of the hallmarks of exotica music compositionally is that a lot of times they don't use what we call chord changes, which are the basis of all Western music. We Western musicians, we work in a harmonic system, and chord changes are basically everything in Western music. Exotica music uses very few chord changes, sometimes none. So you'll hear this bass line just repeating over and over and over. Our fancy musical term is an ostinato. This bass line just repeats. So as a musician playing over this tune, there's so much opportunity just to mess with it. You can do all kinds of fun things. In my band, we love playing this because you can just sit on it and just see where you can take it. So it's a fun tune to play. And it's just got such a deep groove to it that hopefully the audiences enjoy it as well. But yeah, Simulo, great tune. Again, there's tons of different recordings of it, tons of different versions. This website that I'm looking at to come up with this stuff, there's a great website. It's called Secondhand Songs. If you're into researching versions of tunes, it's a great place to look. So now you know everything I know. They've got 28 versions listed of Simulo. Again, everybody's done it. Bobby Darin had a great version. Surf versions, the Surf Aries did it. Cal Jader did it. Artie Shaw taken it in the jazz direction. So a lot of people have done Simulo. Very cool tune. Okay, third one. And this is one that doesn't get mentioned in exotica circles a lot, but I want to bring it in because I think it fits. Poinciana. A lot of people know this as a jazz tune, so it kind of started in the same place as some of these others, and it branched off the other way. Instead of going exotica, it went kind of firmly into the jazz camp, but it still works, I think. Poinciana, very similar story to Simulo. A lot of controversy about who wrote it, where it came from, that kind of thing. It's listed officially as being written by Nat Simon. Spanish lyrics by Manuel Lilso, sorry for pronunciation. English lyrics by Buddy Bernier, Buddy, double B. There's a Cuban folk song called La Canción de Árbol, the Song of the Tree. If this Cuban folk song is as old as people say it was, if it's as old as they say, then this is where Poinciana came from. However, there are no recordings of this Cuban folk song before Poinciana was released. So again, we can't definitively say where this song came from. Simon said he just thought of the melody sitting at an Italian restaurant in New York. It just came into his head. Bernier, Double B said that he saw a postcard from the Caribbean with a Poinciana tree on it, and that led him to writing his lyrics. I don't know. I have no definitive answer, but the first known recording was by David Rose in 1942. So that's the first one that we know of. Again, this was recorded by tons of people. This one, Secondhand Songs, has 390 versions listed again, yes, everybody has done Poinciana, mostly in a jazz context. It's in the jazz real book, and they write it as a jazz with a Latin jazz kind of feel to it. Again, I've heard swing versions, just lots of room for interpretation in this tune. Some of the standouts in the jazz side of things, Benny Carter did it. Les Baxter did a version in '56. On the Latin side, Candido is a percussionist that showed up on tons of exotic recordings and more traditional Latin big band kind of stuff. So Candido did a version. Then you've got, on the jazz side of things, Art Dam, Buddy Cole, lots of big bands. Henry Mancini did it. Ferrante and Teicher did it. Cal Tjader did it, of course. The standout track that most people know of this is Ahmad Jamal did it in 1958. And very much like Baxter with Taboo, Jamal transformed this tune. Again, it was written in the 30s or 40s, so 58, in some ways, maybe it was considered maybe passé or something. It was this is just an old ballad. Ahmad Jamal did it and completely transformed it to where now, if somebody calls Poinciana, you play it the way Ahmad Jamal did it. There's a rhythm that his drummer used, and now if you don't play it that way, you don't know Poinciana. That was not the original rhythm. That's how everybody plays it today. To the point where I've been on gigs and I've called that tune, and I'll say, "Oh, do you know what Poinciana means?" And somebody in the band will be like, "It's a rhythm." Poinciana is not a rhythm. Poinciana is a tree that's found in the Caribbean. It has nothing to do with that rhythm that Ahmad Jamal played, but that's how you play it now. So to me, that's kind of a touchstone, very similar to what happened with the rhythm in Taboo. But you can play it lots of different ways. The Exotica rhythm from Taboo works great in Poinciana. I love to play it that way. Very similar compositionally to how Exotica is laid out. Very few chord changes and lots of room to move your note choices around because of those very few chords. You can play very static bass lines, that kind of thing. And also just in the broader scheme of things, it's trying to evoke a very generalized sense of otherness. It's trying to bring up feelings of the Caribbean-esque, right? But not specifically putting you into the mood of. It's like when you listen to Poinciana, you don't say, "Oh, I'm transported to Cuba." No, you're transported somewhere, but everybody's going to have a different take on where that's taking them. So that to me is kind of why I put it into this category of Exotica, even though today, again, mostly because of Ahmad Jamal, it's put into more of a jazz context. Interesting note, when I was researching just for this video, there's a great recording of Glenn Miller doing it in 1943. The rhythm that they use is what's known as a Spanish bolero, which, if you know Ravel's bolero, they use that rhythm incredibly fast, just burning through. And it's really cool to hear it in that context. I've heard a couple other versions that use that rhythm, which I had never even considered before, but it works. This is going to put us into Baxter territory also, because Baxter was hugely influenced by Ravel and his tune Bolero. And in the stuff that we talk about in the next episode, we're going to get more and more into that side of things. So this is a little connection between this week and next week. I'm saying weeks. We'll see when I get it done. That's Poinciana. Moving on, third tune that I'd like to bring up, and this one's a little different. I put it in here for maybe a different reason. A tune called Bahia. Which again, I think I've said this for every tune. If you listen to Exotica music, you probably know Bahia. Denny and Lyman both did versions of it, both in 1959. I don't know what the story is there, but yeah, they both put it out the same year. It was on Denny's Aphrodisia. Lyman titled his album Bahia, so it's a track on the Bahia album. It was written by Ari Barroso in 1938. This one, when we're talking about our generalized sense of place,
Have you ever been to Bahia?
this one is on the opposite end of things.
No? Oh, I am so sorry for you.
Bahia is a town in Brazil.
Bahia. It is like a song in my heart.
So this is referencing a very specific place. The original Brazilian lyrics are talking about a neighborhood in Bahia. Most of us know the English lyrics, which are talking about the city of Bahia and how wonderful it is. It was actually used in a Disney, it was a short in a Donald Duck movie where somebody's actually telling him about how great this place where he comes from, Bahia, and so he's describing the city. So this is a very specific place. So in some ways that takes it out of the Exotica category because it's so ultra specific. The reason why you cannot take this out of the Exotica category is because listen to the bass line of Bahia. Now, if you've only listened to a couple of Exotica tunes and you hear that bass line come up, you probably think we're about to hear Quiet Village. This is not Quiet Village, this is Bahia. If you look at it on a note-to-note level, it's basically Quiet Village kind of inverted the bass line to Bahia. But it's obviously an influence. There's no way you can listen to these two songs and say Baxter wasn't drawing from Bahia when he came up with this bass line. They're just too similar. So that to me says Bahia has to be a huge influence into Exotica. And again, just looking at compositionally how we structure a tune to make it seem exotic, this ostinato bass line with very few chord changes. Now, Bahia does, you can play it with a lot of chord changes. You don't have to. So the more exotic of a version you want to do, the more you strip out a lot of those chord changes. It is, playing it feels like a marathon. It's kind of a long tune. There's a lot of notes in the melody. I actually, when we play it live, I insert a little gap in the middle where we, the musical term is vamp. It's like we're just going to sit on this little section while I catch my breath because there's a lot of notes in there. So it may be a little more technically demanding than a lot of Exotica tunes, but if nothing else, just for that bass line, I put it into the Exotica category. And when we play it in a set, it does not sound out of place at all. Anyway, a few notes about this one. Again, originally in Portuguese. I might have said Brazilian lyrics before. Portuguese is the language that they speak in Brazil. So originally written in Portuguese. The first release, I love this, 1938, it was sung by Carmen Miranda. So that's just beautiful. I love that. Again, a lot of people know it. Some people think, oh, this is a Disney tune. It was in The Three Caballeros, which was a Donald Duck movie, which was just scenes from different places throughout the Caribbean and Latin America, South America, just all these different scenes. So this was the one kind of representing Brazil. English lyrics by Ray Gilbert were done for that movie. So I think they kind of stuck for a lot of people, but the lyrics are Disney, basically. And then again, I would love to know the story of why Denny and Lyman both recorded this same tune in the same year. The relationship between these two guys was complicated, I guess, to say the least, to say the best, maybe. I don't know. If you don't know this story, Lyman started out as Denny's vibraphone player. He's on the first recording of the first album. There are two. We'll talk about that later. Lyman left the band. He was basically offered, it's like every music based movie you've ever seen. I just see it playing out that way, where the promoter comes in and he says, We want you, but you got to lose the band. That's what happened with Lyman. So he was offered a contract to start another thing. And so Lyman left and he took the bass player with him. So there could have been some bad blood there, but they worked together several times over the years. They shared band members. They played the same tunes in the same style. They were friends, maybe friends at a distance, but I'm sure there's a great story there. Anyway, I'm on a tangent again. It's going to happen a lot in this series. That's my first intro of the Latin side of things in the Proto-Exotica category. Next time, we're going to go a completely different direction and go to Europe, because there is a European connection. I'm going to call it the French connection. And we're going to dive into that next time, which to me as a musician is very interesting. I hope that it's interesting to you as a listener as well. But in the meantime, questions or comments, please throw them in. If you have anything to add, there are a lot of people out there with a lot more knowledge than me. I'd love to get into doing some interviews and talking with people on this channel, so it's not just me expounding. Is that the word? We'll go with that. So yeah, let me know. Get in touch. Put in comments. Send me emails. All that good stuff. I'd love to hear from you, and we're going to keep this going as long as I can manage to keep it going. So from there, mahalo for listening, and aloha, and we will see you next time.